Hello everyone and welcome to episode 36 of the Layton Fitness podcast. Now in today's episode we're going to be discussing maintaining strength while in a fat loss phase. This is arguably one of the biggest problems people will come across when they enter any sort of fat loss phase. Now the reason why this is so important to maintain strength is obviously a big drop in strength will by default mean a drop in muscle mass. The goal is to try to maintain our strength as much as possible, lose the body fat, and by default we're minimizing the muscle mass loss. Firstly, I think it's important to take a little bit of a step back and set some realistic expectations for your strength during a fat loss phase. Let's just compare this to when you're in a gaining phase. Obviously a gaining phase would require you to be in a surplus of calories, probably doing little to no cardio, and strength gains for the most part it's probably going to be relatively linear, or at least making progress over a chronic period of time. Now let's transfer over to the fat loss phase. Obviously calories are going to be much lower, and also there's probably going to be some cardio which is going to be for the most part slowly increasing the further we enter the fat loss phase, and therefore it's important to realise that if we can maintain our strength or lose just a little bit of strength during an extended fat loss phase, it's been very successful. It's important just to pull back your expectations. We're not really looking to continue to gain strength like we did in the muscle builder phase, even though we're aspiring to do that, and if you can do that on a weekly basis, continue to do that. And that, for the most part, can still happen if you're an intermediate to beginner. But if you're an advanced, we need to be really realistic and think actually the best case scenario is going to be maintaining strength. Let's just realise this and accept it. With that being said, obviously if you can still continue to add weight to the bar during the fat loss phase, continue to do so, but have realistic expectations is the main point I'm trying to get across. So regards to the goals of the fat loss phase is obviously losing body fat, and the second goals are maintaining strength and muscle mass. So some big key takeaways here is give yourself enough time. I cannot stress just how important this is. I think most people, one, underestimate the time it takes to lose the body fat they've already accumulated, and too often they underestimate just how much body fat they actually need to lose. There's twofold there. Give yourself plenty of time, and the reason why this is so important is we want to be in a very slow energy deficit. We want to be slow and steady with the manipulations to calories and cardio, and as a result we only want to be losing 1% to 0.5% weight per week. Now this one key takeaway will really be probably 80 to 90% of maintaining that strength. If you try and do any aggressive methods to losing body fat, you may lose a lot of body fat, but you'll lose a lot of strength and muscle at the same time. So giving yourself enough time, focusing on small manipulations when required to calories and or cardio, and this will give you the best chance of maintaining as much muscle mass as possible. So as always, weight training is always the foundation of the routine, whether that's in a fat loss phase or a muscle building phase. And the reason why it's so important within the fat loss phase is this is going to help preserve muscle mass. If you didn't have that weight training in place and you're in an energy deficit, you're again by default going to lose lots of strength and muscle mass. Now it's important to know that the volume will drop very slightly during the weight training within the fat loss phase, maybe anywhere between 10 and 20% compared to your muscle gaining volume, and volume is sets times reps times load. So ultimately you're just doing a little bit less than what you would be doing during the muscle gaining phase. This is just because you don't have the calories to recover from like you did in the muscle gaining phase. You're likely doing more cardio in the fat loss phase as well, so that's just one tip: reduce volume slightly. However, weight training is still the main foundation of the routine. Next big tip is, as I briefly touched upon above, is only add cardio or increase cardio and or drop calories when you actually need to. The goal of fat loss should be to perform weight training, consume as many calories as possible, and perform as little cardio as possible. The reason being, anytime you drop calories and or add cardio, you potentially jeopardize that gym performance, and therefore that can result to strength losses and then therefore muscle mass losses. So whenever you drop calories around cardio or use, it's always an opportunity cost. There's always a negative, therefore make sure you only add these if and when needed, and that is predicated on the fact that you're measuring the progress at least weekly. Photos, body weight measurements, body fat percentage, all these variables, some have their inaccuracies. However, by using a multitude of measuring tools, you can ultimately be more objective rather than just relying on one measuring tool. Another key takeaway when you're looking to minimize strength losses within the fat loss phase is make sure you're consuming sufficient protein, anywhere between 2 and 3.1 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, with the caveat you're relatively lean. If you're over 18% body fat and over 22% body fat for females, I'd set your protein target based on your goal body weight, otherwise protein will come out far too high. So I usually set protein based on body weight rather than lean mass, because lean mass is actually very difficult to accurately determine someone's lean mass. Even DEXA scans have their limitations. However, I say that with the caveat someone's relatively lean. If they're overly fat, they need to set their protein target aligned up with their goal body weight. Another key tip to maintain strength during the fat loss phase is to make sure you're not having your cardio immediately prior to the weight training session itself. So at least after the training or another time of that day or another day completely. But you probably don't want to be within 1 to 3 hours of the weight training session itself. You probably want to be a little bit further away then, because again, we want to focus on trying to almost keep that weight training session in a bubble. We want to make sure we give ourselves the best possible chance of gaining and or maintaining strength within the fat loss phase. If we put cardio immediately before, we can jeopardize that. So make sure that cardio is after the session, another time of the day or another day completely. Another good tip is use deload weeks. If you're within an extended fat loss phase, use deload weeks, lighter weeks where there's less volume, less intensity, which is the load on the bar. This can help provide a little bit of recovery and ultimately can help preserve strength within the fat loss phase. Now, there's lots of schools of thought with frequency of deloads. You can have them every 4th week, you can have them every 6th week, every 12th week, or use an auto-regulation approach where deloads come in place when required. I like to use a combination of all of those with my various clients. It really depends on the client. However, for the most part, if you're dieting for an extended period of time, at least one deload a week within there, probably be a general recommendation, but it always depends. It always depends on the deadline you have available. If you have a limited time for fat loss, then you may not want to take a deload. Another great tool is refeed days during a fat loss phase. So this can really help with maintaining strength, especially if you can put this refeed day, a high carbohydrate refeed day, on a day where you're struggling to maintain that strength. So typically, a good example of this is when you're in an extended fat loss phase, typically your pressing movements will be the ones that decline first. This is the main reason being there's just less of you underneath the bar, pressing the bar for a bench press or an overhead press or something like that. Therefore, using the refeed day on the day itself or the day prior can help minimize the strength losses of these particular lifts. However, it really depends. You might want to put this refeed day on the weaker body parts or a lower body day because you'll be burning more calories on that day. And there's lots of variations of that, but that's another good tool. Another good tool, as I discussed last week, if you want to go back to last week's episodes and learn more about this, diet breaks, where you have 1 to 3 weeks of maintenance calories within a fat loss phase. This can help return some of the negative physiological adaptations back to baseline. It can give a psychological break from dieting. It can really allow the strength gains that potentially you've lost, and you can help bring those strength figures up again during this period if you're bringing calories back to maintenance. So another useful tool. Another quick tip is cardio type. For the most part, you really want to be minimizing too much hit and also too much miss as well. So hit, high intensity interval training, which can be a great tool within a fat loss phase, but at the same time you don't want to do too much where you can potentially jeopardize your weight training. Likewise, MIS, which is moderate intensity, so essentially running outside. Too much of this can potentially have an interference effect on the weight training itself. So you choose your cardio types wisely, use a combination of all of them, and generally try and minimize them if possible. So hopefully you found this useful. Hopefully you can take a lot from this, and hopefully giving you lots of different tools you can start applying within your fat loss phase to help negate any strength losses, or potentially even gain strength within the fat loss phase, which can be done. Certainly for the intermediate to beginners, and you get more advanced, it becomes a little bit more difficult, but that's where good programming comes in to help and actually do this. If you're still yet to download my free ebook, How to Set Up a Nutrition Plan, you go to James Layton, Layton Fitness.co.uk. You can learn more about me on the site. I've got lots more, over 100 videos on the website. Listen to all the other podcast episodes, read all my blog articles, and you can learn about my services and some of the products I have available on my website as well, James Layton, Layton Fitness.co.uk. Okay, thank you very much, guys. I'll speak to you next week. Take care.